Welcome to the Hauger History Podcast. This is episode 91. We're talking about measuring the economy and preparing for an economics unit test. And it's weird when I say economics, I think it's wrong, but economics also sounds weird.
Yeah.
So I'm here with Derek and Alex. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining me and us and you. That's everyone, I think.
Yeah.
Me, us, and you. Can there be more people than that?
Them.
Them. But who really cares about them and those people? Right? We start out in this really weird cryptic manner. So let's get going before I get off track already. So first question, something we've been reviewing in class and your economics classes might be covering is GDP, is a main way of measuring economies and comparing countries. What does GDP stand for? You guys remember?
I mean, the gross domestic product of a country.
That's exactly right. What does it indicate? Alex, you want to take that one?
It indicates the amount that products make.
Yeah, actually, that's pretty good. It's the amount. I said actually like I was surprised, which probably seems wrong on a couple of levels. But the four things that it adds up are indicating the strength of an economy.
Okay.
And you can remember, and you don't need to know all four at this exact moment, but household consumption, business investment, government purchases, and net exports minus imports. So it gives us an idea of how strong an economy is overall. We talked about this in class. What country has the highest GDP still in 2018 and had the highest GDP in 2017?
Kind of forget.
That's us.
The big
Oh,
USA.
it's us?
Yeah.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah, we forget how strong we are sometimes. We don't know our own
Oh,
strength. Yeah, so we are the strongest economy in the world by GDP. By finished products, we have the most. And one of the things we also track besides GDP when we were talking about a country's strength is its inflation. Do you remember the definition of inflation?
It was like when prices increase over time and then something else decreases.
Yeah, the value of our
value.
money, right? So our purchasing power goes down. Very good. And so one cause that might cause inflation, you mentioned, is prices that increase over time. Or if wages go up over time and then people that make things build the price higher because they need to make a profit still. And slowly we're always getting more expensive for the things that we buy. Very cool. We're moving quickly along. So GDP is calculated by adding household consumption, business investment, I'm leaving a blank here, and net trade. Which one of these four, Alex, did we talk about in terms of what's missing here? So household consumption, business investment, blank, and net trade.
I can't see all the answers.
But you know that it's government purchases.
Yeah.
Yeah, good job. So, right. So our government spends a lot of money, and that also indicates how strong our economy is. Like if a country was truly strong, the government would have a lot of spending money, and ours does. So that's one of the things. If you get a salary raise and you really want to benefit and see your wealth rise, you need a raise of at least the inflation rate. So we talked about that in class. If it's around 2.3 to 3% a year and you're not getting that raise, your value of your income and your savings is actually losing money. So that's something that you guys should keep in mind in the long term. And that's why I keep mentioning to you, like when you're young, the time that you have is the most important thing. It sounds like cliche, like I'm trying to tell you, like, remember to value yourself. But that's not what I'm saying. It's like over time, even if you put $100 in, you'll triple it, you'll quadruple it by the time that you're ready to retire. So that's important. GDP is not everything, though. And in class, we mentioned that it's only one indicator of how strong a country is. And so then
the United States
is not one of the top
in
three.
the top three.
We're
20
not.
people.
Yeah.
That's what we learned last class. That's why I was kind of confused on the other question.
All good. And that's why, these podcasts I think can be helpful to people because especially economics terms, you don't use them every day.
Yeah.
And you don't look at statistics and charts and rankings every day. So they can run together. They can get confusing. But per capita, we're not in the top three. That'd be like Liechtenstein, Monaco, and Qatar, and some other countries that are very small. So you can have a lot of rich people and really bring up the average income.
Aren't we in number 19?
That's very good. That's good memory.
Thanks.
Very good recall. What's one downfall of using GDP then? Why isn't it enough just to look at the overall products?
I would just say there's too many other factors involved, like the per capita. If we're not like necessarily putting the resources to great use or whatever, not distributing it, it's not beneficial to everyone.
Yeah, nice call, Derek. And it also doesn't say anything about how happy people are, what the environment's like, what quality of life is like, or any illegal activity or any corruption. Yeah. So just because a country is making money doesn't mean it might be the best place to live or the most free place or that you have rights or anything like that. So it's kind of a faulty way of comparing, but we need some way to compare countries and economies, and that's why we use it. The agency that tracks the unemployment rate, which is another thing you'd want to look at if you're comparing places to live and how strong countries are, that's the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They're the ones that track the unemployment rate. And it's important that they do. So they're independent of either political party. And that's important because you don't want the party in charge controlling the numbers and making it seem like unemployment is lower than it is so that they can say, look at how great of a job we did. And it's unfortunate because sometimes in debates, when we compare presidents, people say that the numbers are skewed. And I'm like, if we can't agree on numbers, we can never have a good conversation. So it's important that the Bureau of Labor Statistics does its job and keeps that rate as honestly as it can. And it's always going to be an estimation. It's always going to be a guess. But the way they calculate it is they take the total number of people in the workforce, they divide by how many people are unemployed, and that's how they get the rate. So if there was 100 people unemployed in a town of 1,000, the unemployment rate is?
10%.
10%. Very good. It's a simple calculation, and that's how it's done. And there's 4 types of unemployment, and something that we're going to cover today. So our students here have not seen this information yet, but there's 4 types of ways people are typically unemployed. One is when you leave a job and you're looking for the next one. That's called frictional unemployment. You're kind of in between. That's the friction. I feel like that was the worst gesture, but wow. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Like have sandpaper and like?
It makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
It'll stick.
Thank you. Oh, it'll stick, like friction.
Yes.
Good job. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, that was fantastic. When the technology and skill needs of an economy change, though, like when technology changes, we don't need people to make regular Nintendo anymore. Although those classics are all coming out, all the retro consoles, man. Christmas, it's going to be good this year. People are losing their jobs. That's structural unemployment. Like the structure of the economy is changing. Maybe we come up with an example. So, like, what have you seen just in your life that like was once popular or once a big thing and is not anymore? Those are always fads.
The Wii.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah.
So like generations of video games is a really good example. What else can we think of that like just phased out over time?
Silly bands. That's another
Sure.
one.
Yeah.
Those are huge.
Yeah, so even like that would be like structural employment of like music
Yeah.
and genres that pop and then they don't. Like when you were little, remember Gangnam Style?
Oh, yes.
Things like
Psy.
that, right? Psy. He's like the top selling Korean artist of all time. So sure, when I was a kid, like cassette tapes for audio and then to CDs, and now very few people buy CDs.
And like the VHS.
For sure, VHS, and now even who's buying regular DVDs. And soon, who will be buying Blu-rays because everybody's streaming.
Yeah.
And then will something replace that
Everyone
someday?
streaming.
Streaming is nice.
It's so great.
It's very convenient. When an economic slowdown then causes job losses during hard times, because we're always going to be, even when we're like always improving as a country, there's going to be dips and there's going to be high points. That's cyclical unemployment. You can remember a cycle. We're constantly moving up. I think I'm reversing the direction for the camera to do it the right way. I never really know. That's cyclical unemployment. And then right now it's headed to the holiday season. So Christmas tree farms are all over the place and then they'll be gone. That's seasonal unemployment. Or if you work at like a baseball stadium, that's seasonal unemployment. And if an economy is growing healthy and things are going well, what kind of unemployment would dip? What would we have less of?
The cyclical one.
Right, because we'd be in a good part of the cycle. Very good, very good. Right now, we're in the good part of a cycle. And it's weird, like I feel nervous at all parts of the cycle. Like when things are bad, I feel nervous because people are unemployed. And then it's like, oh, this is sad. Like during the housing market recession, you just looked around and saw a bunch of people kind of miserable. And when you're climbing, I guess that is the best part, like when you're on the upswing. But now I kind of wonder, like, are we near a peak right now? Because we just lost 700 points in the market in 2 days. Like, people are getting nervous. And they never know when the top is. It's like a roller coaster, but on a roller coaster, you can see that you're getting to the top. And now it's we don't know. But we're definitely at a good point for unemployment. It's very low right now. And when we get to a point where, like, seems like everybody who's willing to work can find a job, we call that the natural rate of unemployment, meaning like it's pretty much as low as it's going to get. You know, we'd have to work really hard and force people to take jobs at this point because everybody that looks pretty much finds something, unless you're in a really specialized market like a clown or a broadcaster or something, which are one and the same. I put them in the same category. Then at some point though, like when things do get hard, you get workers who stop trying to find work because they just get so depressed. What's the term for that?
You can be like discouraged.
Yeah, exactly. Like you just don't think there's any point and you stop looking.
Yeah.
And somehow those people don't get counted anymore. They're not counted in unemployment figures. So they only count people who are actively looking and applicants and people who are seeking jobs. And that pretty much rounds out the unemployment sector. So there was a lot of questions about that. That's a good spot of review. And I would imagine any class is focusing on that for a good portion of their unit. A couple of more things we use to judge an economy. How much are prices raising for the average people, like bread, milk, cheese, eggs? So we put all these things in a table. We look at them over time. That's called the Consumer Price Index to inform how much costs are changing over time. That's important to keep track of. Like you don't want bread to suddenly be so expensive that people can't eat and people can't get the things that they need. If we're looking forward, I know we're just kind of jumping question to question here, but if we look forward to how we project the market's going to do, those are called leading indicators. So you might take, like for sports, you might take a team's record in the first 4 or 5 games to see like how are we going to project over the long haul. And if we wanted to know how the housing market's doing right now, we look at how many home construction projects there are. And in the East Bay, like they're talking, did we talk about this in class? In Pittsburgh, there's protests right now because they want to build 50,000 homes in the Pittsburgh Hills. And so essentially there would be no more Pittsburgh Hills anymore. It would just be houses. And so they're discussing like, well, that's an indicator that like housing is in demand, right? That people need homes and they need affordable homes and they will be willing to move out to Pittsburgh where they could pay a little less. But you have residents pushing back and saying like, well, we keep taking up all this environment. There'll be no environment left to enjoy. Like, where do you guys, this is your future. Like, if you were involved in those meetings, like, do you have a feeling on what we should do?
I mean, if it would benefit people to have homes, like, if you think about, like, the greater good, but at the same time, like, the lands, like, there would be no more just land.
Yeah.
You know?
I feel like there needs to be an established area, a designated area for lands, like, not like national parks, obviously, that are designated, but like for each county or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe, like, you could, like, compromise and do less than 50,000, like, maybe like half of that.
It's interesting. I like the thought, and you're being considerate of both sides because we do need growth and we do need housing, but we also might regret taking up any free space if we don't have any free space left and it becomes just a sprawling suburb. So it'll be neat to see what happened. A lot of the people who are against it are against it for your reasons. Like, where will our kids have to hike or to go outside and do anything? So it'll be kind of interesting to watch that in the local Bay Area. Just so we're doing these for review, but it'll be neat, like, to look back at this one day and be like, hey, what happened with that? You know, history's changing all around. I guess that's part of that growth set, right? That I said you do kind of get nervous even when we're growing because the decisions that we make have lasting consequences that affect our whole environment.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is the kind of thing that I think can make economics interesting and not just terms that get run together and get confusing, right? And it affects our future. So let's say that things downturn like they did in 2007, and there are regular downturns throughout the cycle. I realize now my arm is just like I'm swimming, and it's probably not working. But if we go into an economic slowdown for 6 months, that's called a recession. And not all of them are as bad as like the housing market. Sometimes we just dip for 6 months and it's 1 or 2% and it's not serious. But other times they're prolonged and we lose GDP, and that's called a
depression.
Yeah, and that's more serious, like what happened in 1930s, starting in 1929. So overall, these are all indicators. This whole chapter is about how do we measure our economy? How do we know if we're strong? And you know, we're strong now, so it's important to just make sure that things stay that way in our country. Unemployment tells us how strong an economy is, and then the last thing is the 4 parts of a business cycle. We've touched on them this whole time. You've got a peak where we're at the top. We have recessions where we dip down. A trough is when the bottom levels out, and then we have expansion when we go back towards the top. And we go through that constantly in history. So this will happen over and over through my life, through your time, and I just hope for you guys that you'll never see a big recession like the one that I had to graduate from, because that was super ugly. Yeah. Anything else that is going on that you guys want to talk about?
I think we covered it all.
I think we did,
folks.
And we did it in 15. That's pretty good.
That's pretty
darn impressive right there.
Pretty efficient. So for Derek and Alex, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we'll see you on the next edition of the Hauger History Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Oh, and check out Inspiring Teachers too. I mean, that show is really taking off with those 2 guys that are hosting it. Hats off to them. Yeah,
I watched it.
Cool.
The Skype episode.
Nice.
Pretty good.
Glad you liked it. 500 views so far. That's not bad.
Hey, there you go.
We'll see you on the next one. Later, guys.